Hello there, my friends. I'm here to change the strings on another guitar that I want to show you. I will be doing a full video on this guitar later, but here we have a somewhat, maybe almost vintage Alvarez 5014. It's a very nice little guitar, I have to say. OM body style, very small, and I've only had it for a little while. I'll do a more in-depth review on this thing later, but we're going to change the strings and have this thing playing top shape. When I picked this guitar up, which was last year, I was traveling. I picked this guitar up because I just fell in love with it. Actually, it was the tone that got me. It's got a very aged sound about it, which I really like. And of course, I really like this headstock. I like Alvarez guitars. Look out for those vintagey ones. And this one really suited me. It's very small. It's like an OM style body shape, but it's actually got a very, very short scale. It's 24 3/4 inch scale, which is quite short. And it feels like that. It feels like a little guitar in your arms, which I don't mind. I like that. And this is the first string change I've done on it. As you can tell, I don't have my curls here on the top. It's far from perfect specimen, that's for sure, and I'll talk about that another time. But it's been a delight to have. A couple things on my mind. Tinnitus, or some people say tinnitus. I experienced tinnitus myself. I think it's tinnitus anyways. It's like sinusitis. That's the way I kind of say it. Tinnitus, tinnitus, tinnitus. I've come across some articles recently of some musicians that actually had to abandon their musical career because their tinnitus was so intense. That was very disheartening considering I experienced tinnitus myself. I wonder if you experienced tinnitus too, and as a musician, how daunting is that? It's a pretty solid challenge on my side, that's for sure, but learning to live with it is really, I guess, the art. But if you have any stories or experiences to share with it, I'd love to hear. I wouldn't say it gets in the way of me playing, but it really just gets in the way of bedtime or quiet time. It's like there's this frequency happening. And this bridge pin is stubborn. I'm going to have to pull out the reinforcements here. Let me get a little help here. It's not going to work. Wow. It's really stubborn. We're going in from the inside. This little guy really just does not want to come out. This is just a piece of metal with some round edges on it that I use sometimes, maybe scrape things or it's pushing up from the bottom. Wow, it is stubborn. Holy cow. Oh my word. I've never encountered this before. But we're busting out the we're busting out the jewelry making tools now. This is serious business when you break out the jewelry tools from days long gone. Tiny little pliers, and let's see how this works. It's movement. Starting to come along here, but wow, what a challenge. Here it comes. Wow. Why in the world? I do not know, but that was significant. Where was I? Talking about tinnitus. Oh, joy of all joys, the ringing in the ears. But yeah, I can't imagine my career being ended by tinnitus that was so bad. That would break my heart. So yep, going on with my standards. D'Addario EJ16s, which I think are going to sound quite nice on this little guitar. Don't know if you watched the previous string change. I put some EJ16s on my Alvarez Yeri FYM 66, and I'm not really psyched about them. It's the first time I've really not been satisfied with a guitar string since I moved to phosphor bronze years ago. So continuing my discussion here on doing metronome work, which, as you may know, I highly recommend. There's a couple reasons why I rely on metronome work so heavily. One is simply hand strength, because if you're going to fingerstyle guitar play, your hand strength has got to be a little different. It has to be even across all the strings. So rather than when you're strumming, you can get away with not all the strings being really perfectly clean. With fingerpicking, there's just no real wiggle room with that. Very little wiggle room with that. And so working with the metronome builds up that hand strength, and you can really kind of massage each chord and get your hand position correct to make sure all the strings are clear, and you can really hear, if you're doing repetitive exercises, you can really hear if there's buzzing and if your fingers are bleeding over onto other strings and dulling them. So metronome work gives you that like microscopic practice session to sort those things out. And if you're a fingerstyle player, you're going to be relying on your ability to maintain the bass and that groove with your thumb. Basically, your rhythm is held by your thumb, and that really needs to be on point. Once you're carrying both the rhythm and the melody, they both have to be really solid. So putting in time with the metronome, even as boring as it can seem sometimes, is really worth it. And I find that even when you're working with a metronome and you're wrestling with it, like you're not hitting the time exact, I find that's actually okay. If you're just sticking within the parameters of that beat per minute, whatever you're dedicated to at that moment, you're just sticking with it. Once you turn that off and go to do something on your own, your rhythm is going to be improved. Your ability to hold it down is going to be improved, even if you're not getting it exactly perfect, because none of this is perfect. When we go to play a song, when we go to record a song, there's variations in our tempo all the time, and it's just natural, and it's totally fine. But working with a metronome helps stabilize that within parameters or a threshold that isn't really detectable. It's not like you're going to slow the song down or speed it up, which is the next pitfall we run into when we are fingerstyle guitar players, or any style of guitar player actually. We always run the risk of every song we play works its way to the same tempo, like our inner tempo. And working with a metronome helps us have many different tempos. And when you start a song slow, you don't end the song at that natural tempo, which allows you to present music with variety. And as a listener, I know for myself, when a musician is performing songs that have variety in tempo, the texture is totally different. I enjoy it more, like a 5-course meal. I like different experiences within a set. Questions that were asked of me, why I curl my string ends and don't cut them. It's very simply because, probably 20 years ago, at 2 separate times, I used to cut my strings, and there were 2 instances where I reached over to the peg head here, and a string end went right up underneath my fingernail, and it happened 2 separate times. And at that point I decided I'd stop cutting them, and it's held for me all these years. Well, lots going on here that's not going my way. So, where was I? Was I talking about tinnitus? Maybe. No, I think I was talking about technique here. String changing technique. When I wind a string, I grab the string with my hand like this, and I pull up on the back, and I peg it down. So the string is traveling from my finger to the nut, all the way to the tuner. So that way, as I'm turning it, there's tension on it, and there's no slack. And also, I keep an eye on it so that when it goes around once, I make sure the string hooks below the wind and the string winds downward, so the break angle from the nut to the tuner is downward and not just straight across the nut. So I just hold a little bit of tension there until it's pretty much tight, and I let it go. So it's basically a tension thing, and it keeps the alignment of the string right. So now when I go to wind it, it's wound properly, and there's not a lot of slack in here that's going to need to be pulled. My cousin Brian, who taught me how to change my strings, instilled this in me, and I've carried it forward since day one. Make my little curls here. They're sort of signature. I notice them now when I see another artist that has this going on. As most people do trim them, but it's kind of fun to see folks that curl them up. Admittedly, it doesn't look as tidy, that's for sure. But there's nothing tidy looking about me in general, so that's alright with me. Alright, we're getting this thing up to playing shape after a challenging string change. Be careful on the first and second string, because I have snapped them in the past, so just give a little pull, take that tension out. Hey, there we go. Let's give it a little spin, see what it has to say. Alright, she's ready to go. Thanks so much for watching. Take good care. See you in the next video.